What's up, YouTube? Chris, Legendary Mana. And guess what time it is? It's finally time for the next episode of Deck Teching. Yeah, I know. You thought the series was dead. It's been gone for a month. I've been talking about it over and over again. But it is finally here. Man, I'll tell you, this, I underestimated the work that it goes into actually doing this particular series because, the first one that I put out, Jund Delirium, I think I put it out too early in my stages of sort of brewing the deck, and I come to find out that the deck is actually worthless. It doesn't work very well. But this one I've spent this past month working on, and I'm actually really happy with it. It's at a really good starting point. And again, keep in mind, deck teching is meant to be a starting point, not an end point in the deck brewing process. Our goal is to put something out there that is a good starting point that allows people to build upon, to grow upon, to just sort of, brew something that's different, something that's not really seen out there, that has a potential to become a viable competitive deck. Now, I've tested this out on Xmage. I've tested it out in live in person. It does pretty well. It has some missteps, as in any other. Well, I should say this is not necessarily a Tron deck. It started out to be a Mono-Green Tron, but I kind of started taking some of the pieces of Tron and kind of changing the strategy of the deck to less on the end game being getting Tron out, more of the, I don't know. You'll see what I'm talking about when we get into it. I don't want to talk too much about it before we start, but without further ado, let's get right into it. Here is Mono-Green T-Breaker. Welcome back, everybody. And now we have T-Breaker. Basically, it's a combination of a mono-green deck with most elements of Tron, but not a true Tron build, as some would say. So let's go right ahead, and first thing I'll do, I'm going to dive into the cards that are actually in the deck, in the main board and the sideboard. Again, like I said, this is just a work in progress. This is definitely not a final build, and it's one of those things where we look for you guys for comments, suggestions, recommendations, whatever you want to say about the deck. Just let us know. We'll make some updates, changes, and then I think after a little while here, we come up with a really decent build. We'll go ahead and go out and do some gameplay video. And maybe have a special guest to play against. We'll see. But anyways, let's move on. Diving right into the deck. So what I'm going to do is, like I said, I'm going to go through the cards first. Then I'm going to explain certain reasons why each card is in this deck, if it's not already apparent. So starting with going left to right, we'll start with Wall of Vines. I was looking for sort of a defensive creature that would allow me to have any sort of defenses against some of the haste red creatures out there. I've been running into a lot of 2/1 hasters, 2/2 creatures. So I was like, let me just get something in there to help me out until I can get to my big guns. So Wall of Vines does just about that. It's a 1-drop defender with reach. You can pretty much cast that with any combination of cards that you have in your hand almost all the time. It's not good enough to run 4 copies of. because I think at that point it's too many, and it then takes away from other cards that are in the deck. But I think it's good as a 2-of, and something that you would eventually sideboard out for other strategies. Next, the big gun of this, which really is going to sort of accelerate this deck, and a lot of people that I've played against said to me, interesting. Not sure if that's a good choice, but interesting. And a couple things that this does. With burn decks, it becomes a lightning rod, which is fine with me. I'm okay with it being a lightning rod. Rather than hitting me for 3, waiting to get some of the bigger creatures out. If I have turn 3 Azusa out there, it's either A, I can dump lands that are in my hand directly into the battlefield, which will help me out, or it'll serve as a lightning rod for either counter spells or lightning bolt, stuff like that. So it allows some sort of distraction techniques, but as well as serve a purpose, and that's why we run 4 of them. Big King Kong himself, the 7-drop World Breaker. It's great because he has Devoid, so he has no color. So using Ancient Stirrings, you can fetch him at any time with Ancient Stirrings, which is great. He has Reach, so he can block flyers, as well as you can bring him back with 3 colorless, 1 colorless, 2 of any color, sacrifice a land and return him from graveyard to your hand. So he can bring them back from the graveyard, and anytime somebody destroys them or counters them. Additionally, when you're able to cast him successfully, you're able to exile a target artifact, enchantment, or a land, which I have found has really, really helped this deck oftentimes, especially against the enchantment decks. Oh man, those enchantment decks kill me. Annoying, but this has definitely been the addition that's helped me sort of combat those enchantment decks. And again, this deck is called T-Breaker for a reason. Tron, World Breaker, T-Breaker, you know. Next up, Walking Ballista. Now, this thing was a late addition about a week ago, and I was trying to think again about smaller creatures that I could bring in that could help me either it was either creatures or removal to bring into this deck. And a couple of things is, at first I was looking in green, and I was like, yeah, there's really nothing in green that would allow me to do that. Not effectively anyways. And then I thought about, holy crud, Walking Ballista. It's perfect because, first off, if you have a bunch of land, you draw him late game. If you drop 6 mana on this guy, he's a 3/3, comes in as a 3/3, and you can pump him up. And then you can remove to do damage to target player or a creature to get rid of those 2/1 creatures or those nagging flyers that are 3/1 hasters. Man, you know what? This is like an all-around win for this deck. Karn Liberated, King Kong Tron himself, making an appearance. Mono-green deck of fun goodies. So I don't think he needs any sort of description. But in case if you've never seen Karn before, basically, when people see this card played, they get a little scared. He comes in with 6 loyalty. You plus him, +4, basically target player exiles a card from his or her hand. -3, exile a target permanent. -14, restart the game, leaving all non-aura permanent cards exiled with Karn Liberated. Then put those cards onto the battlefield under your control. It's pretty much a game ender. Ugin, the Spirit Dragon. He's back. He's bad. And he's in here because he also strikes fear in players and can add into the fact of doing direct damage to a creature or player. When you play him, you can +2 him to do 3 damage to target creature or player. Even more crazy is the -X ability, where you can exile each permanent with converted mana cost of X or less. That's 1 or more colors. So that's every single permanent that's 1 or more colors that is equal to X. So if you minus him 2, exile each permanent that has a converted mana cost of 2 or less. That's a color, mono or dual color or tricolor or any color for that matter. And then you -10 to gain 7 life to draw 7 cards. Then put up to 7 permanent cards from your hand onto the battlefield. Oof. That one's nasty. I haven't gotten that one to go off just yet, but I haven't seen that happen before, and it's not pretty. Now, there's a couple of decks that I've seen in the meta, and that is the mill decks. So, to protect from mill decks, I put Emrakul Anne's Torn in the main. The reasons, I didn't necessarily put him in to be a win condition. It's more of a preserver, a life preserver. So if you're playing a mill deck, you can basically shuffle your graveyard into your library with this when it hits the graveyard. So if they continue to have you mill, hopefully it's still in your library. If you are unlucky and you draw it initial hand, mulligan. Don't leave it in your hand. Always mulligan with it. Next up is Platinum Empyrean, and this is again another life preserver kind of card. It's easy to get rid of, but if it helps out for a couple of hands and maybe you can swing in once, it could do some damage for you and help you out. Next is pretty much the rest of the usual suspects in Tron, but we'll go through them anyways. Ancient Stirrings. Look at the top 5 cards of your library, reveal a colorless card among them, and put them in your hand. Put the rest at the bottom of any order. So again, going back to colorless cards you can fetch with that, you have Worldbreaker, Walking Ballista, Karna Liberated, Ujin, Emrakul, Platinum Empyrean, Urza's Mine, Urza's Power Plant, Urza's Tower, Chromatic Star, Expedition Map, Chromatic Sphere. So really, Ancient Stirrings becomes the ability to fetch anything that you need for the most part that's not of color. So that can help out tremendously when you're trying to kind of work out getting your mana ramp going there. Sylvan Scrying, again, allows you to search a library for a land card, not a basic land, but a land card, aka Urza's Tower, Mine, or Power Plant, and put that in your hand. Now here's the cool thing is, let's just say you have Azusa to play, and you have Sylvan Scrying to go look and fetch for a tower, and then you have a Stirrings in your hand with a colorless mana, but you have Chromatic Sphere. You can play Chromatic Sphere, add green color mana to your mana pool, play Ancient Stirrings to grab either a tower, mine, or plant, whatever comes up in your next 5. Then put that on the battlefield, then search your library. You can tap the green and a colorless that you just played to bring power plant or mine or whichever one you need to your hand, and then you can put that on the battlefield. So you can quickly turn around and get the mana that you need in order to ramp into your higher costing mana creatures. Now, this is an interesting addition that I found that I thought that I originally was going to use in a Jund deck, but I later realized it would go much better in a mono-green deck. So, lo and behold, we have 4 copies of Lignify. This enchants a creature and makes it an 0/4 Treefolk with no abilities. So you can take care of Death's Shadow, or any of these other nasty creatures that people can get out in mid-game, you know, turn 4, turn 5. There's a Phyrexian creature that is pretty crazy that I was recently playing against. I've never seen before. I wish I had it in my brain, but pretty much takes care of any creature. So this is pretty handy to have when you need to stall the board until you can get your creatures out. Chromatic Sphere, tap 1 colorless, sacrifice it, add 1 mana to your mana pool, draw a card. Expedition Map, tap 2, sacrifice to search your library for a land card, not a basic land, but a land card. Chromatic Star, which is very similar to Chromatic Sphere, tap 1, sacrifice it, add 1 mana to your mana pool, and then draw a card. When Star is put into your graveyard. We have 7 basic forests and 4 Urza's Tower, 4 Urza's Mine, and 4 Power Plant. When you have all 3, Tower, Mine, and Power Plant, they give you extra mana. So Tower gives you 3 mana, Mine gives you 2, and Power Plant also gives you 2. So that's the main deck. Pretty simplistic and straightforward. Very reminiscent of Tron, but I think has some elements that are not Tron-esque. So it's not, I think it's a little bit more fun to play. I think a lot of it for me was trying to find something that was fun to play and using some creatures that I've been wanting to use for a while and trying to figure out a way to play with them. And so, you know, Azusa is one of those creatures that I was like, yeah, I need to find a way to use this creature. Not just in Commander. I think there's a way to use this card in Modern, and I haven't seen many people try to use it. So this is my attempt. It's working a bit. Let's quickly go into the sideboard. It's pretty straightforward, nothing too crazy. We have 3 Chalice of the Voids to deal with many different style decks, token decks, counter decks, burn decks, and so on and so forth. We added 2 Walking Ballistas to give us 4 total. Remember what I was talking about earlier where you can sub out Wall of Vines? Well, one of the things you could do, or I have done, is taking out the Wall of Vines and put in the 2 Walking Ballistas. You could even do that the opposite, meaning start with 4 ballistas in the main board. I found that the ballistas, I would get them early, and it would be too early in the game, and they almost become useless, and they're just 1/1s. So I kind of like having the Wall of Vines as early game use because they're an 0/3. Reclaim. This is again for heavy control decks. To allow you to bring back critical cards from the graveyard to the top of your library if you wanted to. Not really sure about this card yet. Still trying to figure out though what to put in this slot. Haven't thought anything beyond Reclaim yet. Back to Nature. Again, I've been playing against an extremely excessive amount of enchantment decks. So this is why this is in here. You could probably sub this out for something else that's closer to what's in your meta. World Breaker to add the 4th one in there. You know, one of the things you could do is, you know, take out a single Wall of Vines or take out both Wall of Vines, bring in 4 World Breakers, or bring in the World Breaker and bring in 1 Ballista. So you run 4 World Breakers and 3 Walking Ballistas for more of an aggressive approach to aggro. And that's for ones that for decks that you're playing that aren't extremely hyper aggro. The ones that I've been, like for instance, ones that I've been playing a lot. Surgical Extraction is just a darn good card. And I know it's not green. And I know this is a mono-green deck, but you don't need black mana in order to play it. However, you have the ability to make black mana if you need to when you're using Chromatic Star or Chromatic Sphere. So you don't always have to use the life hit, but you have the ability. Phyrexian mana, a lot of people hate it. It works well here. Blightsteel Colossus. Again, it's one of those, if you're playing a heavy control deck, or if you're playing something that makes you mill a lot, this is something I'll sub out. I'll sub out the Platinum Empyrean and put in Blightsteel as that secondary card that can get shuffled into your graveyard. If Blightsteel Colossus would be put into graveyard anywhere, reveal Blightsteel Colossus and shuffle it into your library. So it can then, you know, continue to be in your library. So yeah, so that's it. So that's the deck. Let me know in the comments below what you think. If you feel like the deck is missing something, or you think there's some things that we could sub out to put in place of. You know, we're really looking to try and engage with you guys to figure out, you know, what is another deck that we could throw out there that, you know, can it be viable? Will it work? Will it work in the meta? Will it, you know, I think I have not put it to the test against Death Shadow yet. I actually haven't had anybody playing Death Shadow on X-Mage. So my plan is to put this together on paper and play this at Wednesday Night Magic. I'll let you guys know how it does. Until then, I look forward to your comments and see you next video.